Any other question before we start our session? We do have like 10 minutes in our hand.
I would like to know how the hello,
Yeah.
excuse me.
Yes.
I would like to know how those remote working works because I'm based in China.
Okay.
If I happen to find a job in the USA and I don't want to move, how is that going to be
If
carried
you
out?
are based in China or India or like outside of US, and if you want to move to US, then the best way, may I know what is your profile? Like what is how old are you and what you are right now doing? If now please before sharing, please understand. I think we are in live. So if you don't
I
want to
know, I
share that,
understand. It's okay,
if you
it's
don't want to
okay. It's okay. I currently have the ISC square CC certificate and I'm taking some courses and on
no,
cybersecurity thing.
it is not
My
about
age
your
is like in my
education.
40s.
Okay, that is the important thing. And are you working somewhere in any MNCs in China?
Uh, I'm working, yes, I'm working, but not in the IT.
So first thing first, there
I
are
have a
two
job
way.
in China, yes.
No, it's not about job. There are, if you want to move to US, you need a valid work authorization. Work authorization means H1, L1, or any kind of EAD. OPT EAD, CPT EAD, or H4 EAD, GC EAD, this kind of EAD. There are plenty kind of EADs. Okay.
Okay.
Now, the for software, H1 and L1 is very easy to get. And to have that one, first some employer need to file the H1 on behalf of you. Now, if any consultancy or any employer asking money for that, that is a kind of scam. Don't go. Because as per USCIS regulation, the employer should file that thing without asking, even talking about money. Forget about asking.
Okay. Understood.
Now, so then there will be a lottery for each one. If your profile got picked, then you need to file, or even not you, your company need to file on behalf of you some of the documents. And the most crucial thing is project documents or client letter, where it should be mentioned that your client are based in USA, and because you are working for the client for a couple of days or months or years, depends, and the clients wants you on US soil to work behalf of you. That's the reason they come connected or requested your employer to bring you in US. Then only you can you, they will share the client letter. Now most MNCs, they will provide everything on behalf of you.
Okay.
So
Yeah, the question was, oh,
best
sorry,
way,
sorry.
the best way, if you go that I think uscis.gov, there is a again, I am not a full fledged, like I have a very minimum idea
Could
and
you say
knowledge.
that again? US.
CIS, that is the US work authorization government portal, and they have elaborately and this, and there are other blogs as well, where you can find a very authentic process how you should apply.
Okay.
There is a high chance I maybe in this particular area I may give you a wrong idea because I am not an expert on that particular field.
Understand, Joe. The general idea is
Yes,
good enough for me. Thank you.
but
I
you need
wasn't.
a
I
very
was
good employer who can file
okay.
the
Okay.
work authorization.
I wasn't really thinking about moving. I was thinking about something remotely. Like I could work from where I am right now in a
Okay,
US company or another company around the world. How is that
then
done?
I think you can find plenty jobs in freelancing portals.
Freelancing.
There, there are certain portal which you can have easily. If there is any MNCs who's like our subsidiary company who have a branch in US, and they are mostly service based company, and they have a branch in China, you will, if you got selected, you will have a plenty job opportunity over there.
Okay, so I will check the freelancing portals for that
Ah,
information.
yes.
Ah, thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. You've been of great help.
Sure. Any other question?
Then is the freelancer portal, is it on the website?
In our website?
Yes.
No. This website is fully for training. But in the freelancing website, you can find plenty in freelancer.com, Fiverr, Upwork. They are very reputed freelancing portal where you can find a good project, and some of the projects are based in US and all over the world.
Oh, okay. Then the other question I want to ask is there any form or type of a mock? Maybe you can conduct a mock interview so that it will be able to guide us in a way that's okay. If there is any actual interview, we can
We do
just.
have a interview library where we have jotted down most of our interview question and answer which our students are facing every day to day. After the interview, they normally share, and we have a separate WhatsApp group. So after the interview done, we planned, but it was not that much active. But our library is active. They should share our question to our student trainer directly or in the group. But I don't know why students are not sharing in the group. I need to check. But apart from that, our whole training is the hands-on and interactive session, right? So
Yeah.
Can I add something here?
yeah.
Yeah. So usually when we are doing the training as well, when we go through a particular topic, so we also will discuss about this is a particular topic where we have seen a lot of questions asked about this topic in the interview. Now, let's say, for example, when you're doing pen testing, there's an XSS topic. We usually tell them this is the topic that's going to be coming out there. And sometimes we'll discuss the way the questions, different ways a particular interview question is going to be asked as well. Right? And the same time, we're also interacting with the past batch students a lot. So they do give a feedback about how it is the process and what kind of interview questions they're getting. We do share that during the classes as well for the students. Right, and so yes, that's so. So we will be discussing about the interview topics whenever that important topic comes out, and explain them. Like this is how to go about and what is the steps you have to take and things like that. Yeah, yes, and that's it. Hope that was useful.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay,
And
I think yeah.
Sorry, sir. The other time when we did the second session, I asked about how do we get to install the Nezox, how's it called? The Nezox application for the pen testing tool. So I don't know, maybe we'll touch that before we start. I don't know.
We missed your question.
Okay, during the last session on pen testing, so you teach us part of the tools for vulnerability scanning. So I put it on the WhatsApp as okay, will you be able to teach us how to install Nezox before? You said you teach us Nezox before start today's session. So I'm just here to remind you.
Oh, okay.
Nezox installation is not part of the session. I think it's part of the main course itself, where we talk about.
Okay.
I think Nexus, if we are going to step by step demonstrate the installation of the lab, it will itself take 2 hours or more than that.
It's a single topic in the course.
Yes.
I think probably yeah, scanning is an one day session for that.
Okay. I think we can start on our today's topic, and if something is remaining in the yesterday's topic, sorry, Mr. Karthik, I have wasted few of your valuable times, and thank you.
Thank you, Vinay. Give me a minute, I'll start. Is the recording started? So good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of us who's joining today from different parts of the world. Yeah. So hope you were able to go through the previous videos and understand the flow, right? So today we'll be going on the next phase of cybersecurity, which we see in today's generation is DevSecOps, right? And we have seen, and we'll be looking at how this is important key perspective and why this is concept is spreading like a wildfire, right? Wherever we go, any kind of an interviews, all of our students are checking out, taking out. Even in any kind of a roles, everyone is shifting towards DevSecOps. And what is this DevSecOps? What is this beast, and why so many people are jumping into this particular process? We'll be looking into that today, right? So as we have seen, we have completed 2 weeks previously. First week was about cybersecurity awareness, where we led you to the concept, what are different concepts and things like that. And in the previous session, we spoke about penetration testing, right? How do we secure a website by actually breaking the website? So in this session, we'll be talking about a concept called DevSecOps, where it is going to deal about how the cultural shift is going to change, right? It is not something new concept that we'll be completely introducing in a different way, but the way the approach is going to be there, it is entirely going to change, right? It is going to change drastically. The impact on computer security of any organization is going to have a huge impact. And we'll talk about what are the different processes, what are the structure they have to approach, and how security is made easy or possible. What are the traditional issues they could face in a cybersecurity space in any organization? And we'll see how DevSecOps is overcoming that or helping the company mitigate those kind of issues with that. So in the next week, we'll talk about cloud. And one more beauty of this all 4 weeks of class is that even though all the concepts are interrelated, are at the same time they are independent of the other concepts, right? There are certain things we'll take from them. It is not that if you've not attended security awareness in the week one that you'll not understand what is happening in this week. The concepts will be redone to a certain extent and it will be easier to follow up, right? If you're thinking like, okay, fine, I don't know about the first 2 sessions, I'm joining the new session. Don't worry, the way we're going to approach is going to be very independent, but still we'll talk about the other things as well, right? So in the previous session, I think you might have seen, I think a lot of people, I think, had to leave early. There are two concepts that was, it was on a, I think they missed out. One is the threat modeling and the second model is defense and threat. Luckily, those two concepts are again are in important concepts in DevSecOps, and we'll talk about that today as well, right? So people who have missed out on the last topics last week will not have to worry. We'll talk about that. Let me. So before, right, we could talk about DevSecOps. We need to talk about DevOps. Security as a whole in cybersecurity or anything, it is always an additional layer to the underlying technology that is present out there. An underlying technology, we need to understand the underlying technology, how exactly it is operating. And then on top of that, security is going to be present out there. So any one of you can tell me what is a DevOps and why companies shifted or organizations shifted from a traditional approach to a DevOps approach. Anyone have an idea about it? So for instance, let me explain. So what happened was in a traditional approach, what they call it as monolithic approach, you might have seen, the applications were huge and the changes that used to occur in applications were very less frequent. I think almost non-existent in some cases. For instance, when we talk about cybersecurity, sorry, not cybersecurity, banking, core banking operations, the software where that is used for depositing the money and the process for withdrawing the money or then transferring from one account to another account, it is going to remain the same. The code is also going to remain the same. The application is not going to change at all. But as the time passed, more and more organizations started implementing software web application part. And that is where we saw that there is a huge impact. Going with the traditional model, it is not going to be very useful out there. Right. So in this approach, what is going to happen is that requirements used to change frequently. Right. For instance, if you take Amazon or Facebook, you can always see their structure is changing constantly. They're adding new features to that, and this process is going to happen. So if you go with the traditional approach, and this is not going to be very difficult to manage and upgrade for that. So that is why they came up with the DevOps approach, where the features are changing constantly. Doing certain kind of an operations need to be operated or need to move to an automated process because it is going to be much more easier for them to manage and they can scale. They can work on multiple applications. At the same time, since automation is introduced, it will take out the weakest chain in the link. Which is the weakest chain in the link? Always it is going to be the human factor, and that process is going to be there, right? So it is also DevOps also made sure that different teams were able to communicate better, and the gap that was present in all the teams were much better. Meaning, in typical a web application team, what usually happens is that there is one team which is writing some kind of a program, and there is one team which is testing that program, whether the code is having any error or not. And there's one more team which is launching that website. Let's assume it's a web application. It is launching an application, right? In a traditional approach, there was no communication channel with them. So there was no process to go about it. There was no standardization, right? For instance, a developer may be running in Windows 11 and where the application may be running on server, Linux server, there could always going to be an issue with that. So DevOps brings down all those things down for that, right? But there is a security drawback here, right? From security drawback is the challenges they face, right? So before going about the security challenges and things like that, let me tell you a real-time case study. So I was working for one of the biggest Middle Eastern banks. They deal with a lot of money, and we worked on a very particular application that is supposed to be only meant for millionaires, right? So that that particular application, the bare minimum requirement about, I think for about 7 million or 8 million deposit should already be there in the account for that particular individual. And then they will go to that person and they'll talk about the future investment. And this is a very critical application. And they came up, so before it could be launched, right? They came up to us and told, this is the application. Let us know we are going live day after tomorrow. So that was a very critical application. So I put all my team on that and we ran the test, right? Which is nothing but the penetration testing. And we found a lot of 1 or 2 critical bugs in that application. And we told, no, you can't launch this application. It is having an issue, right? And the team was furious because they had to do it again and process for that. So now it could not be launched. It got delayed by a week because by the time it went back to the team and it took about 10 days to implement it and relaunch it, retest it, reconfirm it, everything. You may be thinking it's a 10 days. That's not a huge number of time. Think about from a money perspective, right? Think about because there was a security bug out there, it could not be launched. It means that company could not get investment for 10 days. And it's in huge high ticket application where the investment is going to be in millions. They lost that million, whatever the dollars that is going to come into the account, it got delayed by a week, right? And it impacts the business a lot. One of the reasons why companies are moving so aggressively towards cybersecurity these days, and because pen testing or people data breach is happening for a long time, and cybersecurity companies and cybersecurity teams have been screaming out, like, we need to go live, and there's always a delay, right? Now there's a twofold for that. One is the compliance requirement, the government and the compliance organization making sure that they need to give this kind of a minimum cybersecurity, or there's going to be penalty for that. Right. And even the clients are asking, make sure we want an understanding that you are having a client cybersecurity in play. Without that, we will not do business with them. Right. So those are the things. It is going to have a huge business impact. So that's the reason for that, why companies are moving ahead with that. So now they started cybersecurity into that, but they're finding difficulty. Right. So they're having a DevOps operation already. They're finding difficulty of doing with that. Right. So what is the difficulty of that? So one is the first problem is speed versus security. So the speed on which the functionalities are going to be deployed is being delayed in the DevOps operation because they have to prioritize security as well, meaning they develop the application. And once development application goes into the deployment mode, they will be testing for cybersecurity vulnerabilities. And when you find the vulnerabilities at that stage, you have two options, whether to launch or put the vulnerable application into production, or to go back to the drawing board and see where the issue is there and then fix that issue and then come back and retest it and do that. So here, since we have to go back in time and redesign, recode, retest, it is going to add time to the project. Right. So we have a simple example. There was one web gaming website. They had a security flaw. They lost about $10,000 in a single day because of that. And when they came back to us and told, you cannot launch it, there's a critical bug, you have to rewrite the application. And they went on, closed the website for 2 months. They lost a lot of customers and even the revenue. Even if you're talking about $10,000 per day revenue, and think about how much money they lost in 60 days time, right? The money did not appear out there. So that is there. One more problem is the issue. One of the main reasons why DevSecOps came into existence is lack of skill set, right? If you go and check out in the market for the DevOps, even though there is a severe shortage, there's a recession is going on. Amount of interviews that is happening for DevOps position is significantly high. One of our students is someone who is attending interview every day, and it is more than one interviews in a day. And sometimes he's attending all the way up to 3 interviews. So why is that? There's a skill gap. So how do we overcome this skill gap? Is one of the ways is automation one, right? How do you identify the vulnerability? How do you mitigate this? And what are the ways of finding out this automation? How do we automate that? If we have seen our DevOps in the webinars that has been done by the Besi sir, he has explained phenomenally well how DevOps can do CI/CD pipelines, how the automation is going to be there, how the Kubernetes will help you the process and things like that. But it is not been done on the security level. So that is where again even though we run, right, we are running out there, but when it comes to cybersecurity, the teams, DevOps teams will still have to click on the manual mode, right? That is there. And one more concept was integration of security. Security is always thought of as an external. It is not part of it. Think about you're having a laptop and there is no Wi-Fi adapter in the laptop. You have to connect external dongle, right? And dongle may not work properly for your laptop. It may be working for other laptops. And again, the dongle quality changes and things like that. And it is going to be not going to be seamless, right? Similarly, the security is always an afterthought, is not taken into consideration while the application is developed. So the integration is going to be difficult. All right. And there's the insufficient security skill set as well, right? So there's not enough people working on it. Right? How many of you have seen the amount of openings that when you check out DevSecOps or cybersecurity and security analyst role, you will see a huge gap, huge openings out there because there's a skill gap is very high. And good point for the job market is that this skill gap is going to get it's going to get more and more difficult to fill. And bad thing for companies is that they will find difficult to find people who can do this process. All right. Then it's also cultural depth and technical depth, cultural shift, right? The way DevSecOps, just like a DevOps, DevSecOps is a cultural approach where you're getting more people to involved in the security operations. People from all different parts of the organization are going to be part of a security and how it's going to be there. So the approach itself is going to change out there, and technical depth and the insufficient skill set as we seen out there, right? So even though we are seeing, even though security personnel are there, first part is that there's not enough people in the market who can do this activity. Even though the security team is there, they don't have the skill set to integrate the security with the normal DevOps team, right? So those are the things that could be there. So, right. So how do you think, like anyone has any idea? So how can we overcome this? People have gone through DevOps. How can they overcome this? Right? What could be the solution? What you can do out there? Right? So how do we overcome these challenges? Right? One of the best ways to go overcome this challenge is 4 different main concepts are there: shift left, security as a code, continuous security, and training and awareness. Right? So shift left basically talks about introducing security into the organization at the earlier stages, right? Not waiting for it to be the process. Security as a code, basically, we're talking here about how do we implement security in the code level. So what usually will come to that as well. And continuous security is the cycle. When we saw in the DevOps, you're able to launch the application, you're able to deploy the application, can do some basic testing application, then you do the monitoring process, and it goes in an infinite loop. We're constantly adding the functionalities and things like that. Similarly, we're supposed to do the entire process in that particular way. Right? That is very important out here. And we'll talk about all those things. These are the things that is going to be there. And training and awareness finally. Training and awareness plays a major role. Lot of organizations that we saw or we see are having a data breaches, not because there is a vulnerability in the application or there is a design is not used. It's basically because the human link, they are clicking on certain links and giving out the confidential information, whether knowingly or unknowingly. So, right. So this is the problem with that process, but only this can be only be achieved by helping people understand like how, what their actions, what are the things they're supposed to say, right? When they're doing their day-to-day activities, where they can put their credentials, where they're not supposed to put the credentials, what are the security measures they have to take by them. Do they need to use VPN, right? All those things has to be taken into consideration. But in that process, it goes, right? So that is way of going about it. So we'll talk about the first concept of shift left here, right? You might have heard about, right, software development lifecycle. Why do we use the software development lifecycle? To make the process of developing a software much more streamlined. One of the key features why SDLC is present is to identify the risk involved in the project at an earlier stages. Meaning, is there any issues that we could face in developing the application and things like that? And that can be issue understood process and when go ahead with that. That's how it is going to work. So different stages in SDLC is to design design the application on the drawing board, telling us what are the functionalities that is needed. Then we'll write a code for that. So for this functionality, for instance, let's take an application where storing is student information. In this place, we're going to talk about how the web page is going to be there. What are the information that we need to collect from the student? For instance, his name, address, what is his qualification, and all the other information that we need to take a look at. Right? But there's no code written at this page. In the next stage, we'll write a code for that. After that, we are going to do the testing process, right? Whether the functionality, when I'm storing a student information, whether it's calculating, it is storing the data correctly in the database or not. For instance, if there is a fees calculation functionality there, based on the subject, what fees is going to be there, is that being done or not? That things need to be tested. Once that is done, a deployment is going to, we are going to deploy the application. Right? That is the process we go. After the security came into the picture, we're going to do after the deployment, we're going to do the security testing. Right? If you might have seen in the previous seminar or webinar, that usually testing going to happen in two phases. One is the vulnerability assessment, where we are using the industry specified standard testing tools for analyzing any kind of vulnerabilities at the infrastructure level, as well as from an approach to the web application. What is generally available to a non-authenticated user, that is going to be done. And then second part is going to be the penetration testing, right, which is going to check about whether there's an authentication authorizations are going to be tested or not. All those things are going to move out there. As we discussed previously, this approach is going to add more time to the deployment and adding more time to the and making the application complex and non-efficient as well, right? So adding testing at the end of it is like adding salt at the end of the cooking, right? When you adding salt at what time is very crucial because it changes the way your food is going to taste. I think you might have seen any of the videos, they'll tell don't add salt. After once the onion is been fried, then only can add the salt because it will lead to other water being discharged from vegetables and things like that. It is good. Where we are going to add what phase is very important. And if you add salt at the end of it, it is not going to taste, it's going to be very bad. And you still can't. Even let's say you have added salt in the starting and it is not sufficient, right? You're going to add it in the end. It is going to severely affect your cooking as well. In a similar way, security is like a salt. The way you are going to add it is going to be very much important. Adding it at the end is going to have a huge impact. Right? As they say, right, there is a say in cybersecurity. If you identify a vulnerability at design stage, it is going to cost you $5. If you identify a vulnerability at the coding stage, if it is missed in design stage, but you while coding you understood that vulnerability, it is going to cost you about $50. And if you identify at the testing stage, it's going to cost you about 500. And if it goes to deployment, only after deployment, you're going to identify, it's going to cost you about $5,000. And it's a old methodology. If it is identified by an hacker, the impact is we don't know, right? The company can close or they could lot of data and the impact is going to be very high. The reason being is that if I identify the deployment stage, why it is going to take more time is I have to do the other processes again. The number of time I'm going to sit on the application is going to be more, and the developers will have to sit more on them. So in order to overcome this is why it's called shift left, moving the security from the right side of your software development lifecycle to the left side of your software development lifecycle. And this is where we're bringing we are going to look at the security in the design phase itself, right? And we are going to add security at the coding phase. We are going to add security at the test phase. We're going to add security at the deployment phase. And it does not mean that we are not doing security testing after the deployment. That is also going to be done. But when we identify security at the design stage itself, it is going to reduce critical vulnerabilities. What are the other things? Significantly. We have worked with a lot of teams where we have seen there's a organization who does not have a security team. Amount of vulnerabilities they will be significantly high. It's too high, and we sometimes will. It is in the pages of the report is going to be very 70 to 80 pages of report telling them for a small website this many vulnerabilities, and they have to redesign the web application. And we have also tested for teams who have a DevSecOps operations ongoing, and they have the design phase itself. They look at and code level, they're doing all those things. It is a nightmare for an hacker or a nightmare for a pen testing team because we cannot. It is so difficult. It is so difficult to find vulnerabilities. Forget about critical. We are even finding it difficulty to identify low vulnerabilities, right? When there is, it is easier for us if there is a lot of vulnerability because we can just tell this is the report that is there. If we find a web page where there is no vulnerability, I will have to write a much more bigger report telling that what are all the tests I've confirmed done on the application, and I have to show them the proof that all the tests failed, meaning none of the vulnerabilities or the malicious code I wanted to inject did not happen, and I need to show them the proof for that as well, because they will think that I've not done a good job. So I have to prove them. So that is the process of that, right? So adding security at the earlier stage itself, it is that. So SD secure software development is the process, and it is secure software development is the process where we are moving into DevOps, right? So in DevOps, we are getting is adding more people into that fix and getting it interactive. Everyone is going to be part of the security team. Your designer or an architect who's designing, he's going to be part of the team. He's going to interact with security persons and things like that. It is no longer the security person is not going to be involved in the application. Only after the deployment he was involved. Now he is going to be involved in all the places of that, right? So it is now, since what was the security challenges, integration of security was the main challenges, one of the main challenges that is overcome using a DevSecOps approach, right? So it is again a cultural shift, right? So when we look at the tool sets,
sorry
right?
to interrupt. Before we move deep in the DevSecOps, I think Tamzida has one question, and
Yes,
I have another question to everyone. Among our attendees, anyone ever worked as a DevSecOps, or anyone ever applied as a for a DevSecOps position? Because this is very trendy position, is and a very in demand and high paying job in the market. I'm assuming no one. Okay, yeah, Tamzida, please go ahead.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Karthik, can you go to the previous slot, please? Like SDLC,
Yes.
like C.
Yes.
Yeah. So as you mentioned that, like for now, like everyone is very concerned about the security, and we should start adding the security from design phase.
Yep.
So whoever will, like suppose whoever will get this training or get a job like as a DevSecOps,
Yes.
is that person is responsible for all the phase, or like for design someone is appointed for design phase, someone is for code, someone test, or like how does that work?
No. Yeah. No. You're going to be part of the security team that is going to work on all these phases of them, right? So what is going to happen is that, so the remaining part we'll talk about, there are certain tools that you will set up in a DevSecOps environment where there's an automation process for that. But during the design phase, the team is going to talk about the functionalities, and they're going to talk about the flow that is going to happen out there. All right. So if you have seen in the wireframe approach, right? If you when you see an application, right? So if you see, there's usually an application process will go like this. They will tell when you open an app, this is the first thing that is going to happen out there. And when you do login process and things like that, after login, and it is going to go in a next page and what is supposed to be there. So this is going to be designed by a developer for their application. So as a DevSecOps engineer, you're going to come here and tell, OK, there's a login page here. So what are these are the login page attack vectors that are there. Someone can brute force. Are you making sure the password policy is there? So what is the password policy? Are you telling the 10-character password is mandatory or not? Is the complexity is being implemented or not? You have to do that. Are you implementing CAPTCHA or not? Those are the things that you will be talking about there. Because if you remember in the previous class, when we talk about, a security engineer will always have a checklist for that. And that checklist need to be followed for when you are doing the testing part. So when it comes to the design part, we take the same checklist and we'll ask the developers, are you having any kind of a security feature for this kind of an attack, right? If they're not having, then you're going to recommend you have to put up this. So this part is where in the DevSecOps process is going to be a manual part for the design part. So whereas code, test, and deploy, all those things is going to be automated from a DevSecOps environment, or you can run the tools manually as well, right? Depending on the project, right? It is just always how you're going to purchase a car, right? So usually you're going to purchase a car based on your needs, right? And especially in US, they would prefer going to trucks and things like that, large vehicles, because they think they need to take the children to the school and then have to go to the grocery shopping and do some other activities. Based on their requirements, they're going to take the vehicle out there. And similarly, whether you're going to go with complete DevSecOps CI/CD pipeline, or you're going to be a partial CI/CD pipeline, depends on your company requirement. But these phases will be there, and we'll look at all those. Everyone, you as a DevSecOps engineer, we are going to work on all the topics that are specified out there, and you will be working. That's going to be there, right? And if you're working in some small organization, you probably might have to do some part of coding as well, right? So that is going to be there. Yeah.
Thank you so
Yes.
much.
Sure,
Yes, thank you. I was just trying to understand, like now I understand, like every part, like the developer has a developer team, tester has a tester team. So wherever the DevOps team will be, then DevSecOps will be part of the DevOps team in addition. So
Yes,
they
yes,
will start
exactly.
working in the from the beginning, like the from design phase all the way to the end deployment and the monitoring part, everything. Thank you so
Sure.
much for explaining.
Welcome. Right. So for this, because what are the benefits, right? So we saw what are the what is DevOps and what is the challenges we face in DevOps. And by implementing DevSecOps, how it is going to be useful, right? So why do you think, right? Anyone have idea what I mean by integrating security from the start, potential vulnerabilities are identified and addressed earlier, right? So what do you mean from that? Based on your understanding till what we have done here. So what do you feel? So how does in a real-time scenario it's going to be helpful for you?
So, because integration is like the process, like whenever anything starts, so it has to be go through as it started. Like there will be no changes, no change data, no modification, no deletion in between the integration, like with the contact with the previous stage and the new or modification any stage. So if the security is implied properly, then the part of integration, then there will be less vulnerability and less activity for hacking or anything in that integration phase. That I thought it my
Yes,
understanding.
yes, exactly. That's exactly the true case. That's right. So proactive security, for instance, let's say, as I told an example now, right? There's a login functionality and there's a weak password possibility out there, right? So meaning that you're not telling the the team may not be specifying that there should be an 8-character long password. They're telling any character password is fine. So meaning 1 or 2 characters also. Like we have seen it, and so that can be identified at an earlier stage. XSS attack and SQL injection attack, which are more critical bugs, can be identified at earlier stage, right? DevSecOps, that is the why we find it difficult. Even it is able to remove about 95% or 96% of the vulnerabilities. That's the thing, and it is cost effective also, right? So because we identifying at an earlier stage, it is, let's say, for instance, right? So we talk about, one second. So we talk about, cost effective. We are now, your developers are paid in hourly, right? Then every hour they're going to be paid a certain amount of time. So if this process happens at a later stage, when they have to redo the every process, your architect is going to spend about 2 hours extra rethinking how the process is going to have. The coder or the developer will have to rewrite the code, meaning why this is going to be difficult is that if you've written any piece of code, even a single page of code, and someone tells you go and rectify this particular process, redo it, you would rather rewrite the entire code than rectifying it, because you have to understand the flow again. It makes a big mess. So all this process is going to be removed. It is going to be cost effective. Amount of time spent on the code is going to reduce in the long run. It is going to reduce the money spent on the code as well. And the speed is also going to be increased because I don't have to go back and redo the application and things like that. One example for this is that we do a very small process, right? So there's something called as input validation check. We check out or any input. Let's say there's a name field, right? There's a name field that is that we give all the inputs in that, right? If you see in your keyboard, for every number 7 to 8, 9, 10, and everything, there's a special character when you give the shift up there. And we put this in the input field and press enter. And if it gets executed, no error message is there. It's a low level. It's a vulnerability. It is not going to give an hacker your data, but it is not a best security practice for them, right? So this is going to be an impact for that. So if they identify this at an earlier stage, right? Now, wherever there is a text box, they will have to write a mitigation technique for that. So it is going to be very, very, very slow, right? It's going to impact. But if they identify this earlier stage, they would have written a single function, right? They would have written a single function and they would have called it every time there's an input field that's coming out there. So that they did not. It's going to add value to that, right? That's one thing. And one more thing that we'll see here is the collaboration, right? All the teams are much more in line with that and enhance the security. We don't have to worry about the process. So what is the next phase you guys think? Okay, fine, I worked on the design phase, but how do you, the next phase is the coding phase. How do you going to check that? So what could be the solution from your end, right? So all of you are going to be cybersecurity professionals. You have to think from an, you have to put on an hacker hat on your head and think about it. What could be the next phase? I'm going to make sure that this is, how can I, the next phase is the coding phase. How do I identify vulnerability? What could be done by? Any answers? Right. So next phase in the coding phase is very simple, right? You're going to do the security assessment testing, static application security testing, right? It is where you're going to look at tools that are going to help you with the checking the code level vulnerabilities. You're not running the application or doing anything, no. You're actually looking at the source code, the program that is written and checking for the vulnerabilities, right? So there are multiple tools available out there in CI/CD pipeline for different phases of it. But why there is a need for CI/CD pipeline for the security process? Why there is a CI/CD pipeline? Why there is a need for automation is very much important. So one of the main reasons the need for automation is that we lack security professionals in real world, and it is going to get even worse in the future. So I will not be able to. So only way to overcome this situation is to train the developers or the train the already existing team to do the security testing for them. So it is going to be very difficult because it is a security is a difficult concept in a lot of ways. You need to have that. So developers usually don't have time. So what we do is that we introduce automation out there where there is a, all the developer has to do is run some kind of a test where we can identify the different phrases, right? So in CI/CD process, there are multiple testing process or tools for different phases. For static analysis, application analysis for security, it's called as SAST, that is static application security testing, where we are using tools like SonarQube for testing the code quality, and Checkmark is also one of the tools that we can use out there. And if you remember, we last week we used the DASH tools, right? Dynamic application security testing. In DASH, you're not checking at the code level at all. You're deploying the application. Once the application is deployed, you're going to look at it and you're going to run a scanner on that, and that is going to give out information related to that. So it gives out a much more clear picture of how the application is running, what are the vulnerabilities that are present out there, and things like that. One more concept is called, where you might not be knowing, is software composition analysis, right? Software composition analysis is a tool where it will identify the components that you're using in your web application or your application. Is it vulnerable or not? So if you remember, how many of you remember what are the three ways, three locations where a vulnerability could be occurring in a website or an application? Right, anyone? So last week we saw that the vulnerability could occur either in the configuration part or the code which we have written, or in the vendor part, right? So vendor, we do take, let's say for Python, our program is written on Python, but we need to install Python on it. So what if there is a vulnerability in Python? We don't have access to that. We will always have to work on the updation of that to the latest software version. But how do we know that the software or the tools that I'm using for my activity is safe or not? How do we know about that? For this, you'll get software composition analysis. So that is going to be part of it. And finally, the vulnerability assessment and pen testing is going to be there as part of the process. And pen testing is still important, right? It is still relevant, and vulnerability assessment is still relevant. Why? So let's assume that I've done the design phase, I've implemented all the security features in that. The coding phase, they have done all the coding required to mitigate the vulnerability. But I still need to check that is working as intended or not. There are certain cases where, for instance, they might have implied added captcha as a security feature, but problem is that it will have an impact, right? They would have not implemented properly, and that will still be vulnerable for them. Right? So that's the things that we need to take care. Why pen testing plays an important role. And here you can see in the top section is your DevOps pipeline tools, and the below section we can see the different tools that is going to be used by us for doing the DevSecOps operations, right? For code level, we are looking at SonarQube, Checkmate, and the checking, testing, and scanning we're using. Tenable is nothing but your Nessus, right? Wava scanner is there, and a lot of other things. And Splunk is basically a monitoring tool, right? Catchpoint and Splunk are monitoring tool because whenever CI/CD pipeline is an completely and complete process, right? It is always going on an infinite loop. It is going on an infinite loop. When the application is tested, what we are supposed to, we are supposed to monitor, and the monitor, then again it will go to the new features to be added, and the process keeps on continuing for us. So in this phase, we need to see how the application is running. Is there any application is behaving any weirdly or anything? Is there any more malicious activity being applied? So those things we have to be aware of that, right? For that, we need Splunk or other UpGuard or Catchpoint tools for monitoring of process. For simple example, most of you may be using Linux and things like that, and you will use something called as a sudo command, or you directly log in as root, right? In any large organization, if they're having a security operations center, even if you do sudo ls, this will be recorded and there's alert is generated, and you will have to give an explanation why sudo command was used. Even though you're listing, but you mistakenly set up in sudo command and in front of it, you will have to give an explanation because they will take it. That is the level of monitoring. Each and every action is going to be monitored, and it is going to be sent to the Splunk or other tools that are there, and they will generate alerts for that. Even by mistake, you're connecting your pen drive, even no data is transferred, also you have to give, because as soon as you connect a pen drive, your laptop is going to send a signal to the security operations center, right? So this process has to happen out there. Now this is going to be complete loop present, the flow for you, right? So previously we spoke about threat modeling and defense in depth, and the design phase, what we talk about now is nothing but your threat model, right? Where we are identifying the either threats at an earlier stage and defining the countermeasures, so mitigate threats and things like that. So we are going to plan accordingly, right? So we have to understand not only that in threat modeling, we're also going to look at what is a threat and what is the severity of the threat. For instance, as I told, right? So if there is an input validation where we're checking for the special characters is getting inputted or not and things like that, this is a low level threat, right? Whereas let's say if there's a script alert is being executed, can be executed, that is a critical level threat, and this is a low level threat. So we are going to prioritize which is more important and things like that. Right? That is going to be a huge impact, and that is how to identify which is important, which is low. And threat modeling is going to help you, right? So for instance, it's similar to that. Let's say you're stuck in an accident or some kind of an issue is there. We always tell the kids are first important, and then we'll go with the women, and then the men are going to be taken into that. Why? We are prioritizing who is more important in the situation. In a similar situation here, we are prioritizing a critical bug should be focused more on that. The developer teams is going to have a lot of interactions and things like that, because when you introduce security at a design stage, it means that they will have to write more number of codes, and you will have to stamp your authority on that, right? One of the main advantages of being a security team is that you get to control the flow and you get to steer the application in the right direction, right? You are going to be the processor. And DevSecOps also in defense in depth, right? So any idea, guys, what is defense in depth and what exactly I mean here? So I'm telling it going at each stages. So multi-layer approach. So what do you mean from that? Right.
Okay.
This will be much more, yeah.
Okay, when we talk about in depth, is in the cybersecurity and organization.
Yes.
Well used in the cybersecurity organization.
Your voice is breaking up. Your voice is breaking up.
Okay. Multiple security in a way that you can restricted, that at every there's always something that can to get within into multiple layers of security at the network segmentation, restrict their efforts. We can also liken it to pain, that at least at every point there's always something that can discourage them.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Very good. Very good. I think it's probably, I think you have summarized in better way I could have done it. It is absolutely true. So defense in depth is about adding more complexity, because if someone is telling we'll give you 100% security, your data cannot be, compromised at all. Anyone is going to tell that is any proper cybersecurity person is going to tell that is a lie. Don't believe for that. It is nothing but someone is trying to sell you snake oil for that, right? That is not going to happen. If someone wants to hack your data, they will always find a way, right? So if you look at Mission Impossible movies, that's the point. They'll go to the most difficult. It's absolutely impossible to break something or crack something or do something, and they'll still be able to do it. But they do it for the greater good, but they're still able to break it, right? So that's human tendency for that. Only thing that we can do to view security is, as you just told, we can increase the depth, we can increase the complexity, right? So that only the elite can actually, if possible for them to break it should be only it's not like everyone will be able to break into that. Make it more difficult. Give the defense more time to detect what is happening out there, right? If there is no security, it will take a fraction of a second to take it. But if you give a single layer security, it will take less time for them to crack it, right? For instance, example you can take it is, let's say you're having a valuable in your home, you're going to keep it in your safe. Then you're going to lock the cupboard, then you're going to lock the room, then probably lock the house, then you lock the gate, right? Now someone has to go into that. Probably they have to compromise your perimeter, that is your gate. Then they have to compromise your door. Then they have to compromise your room door. Then they have to compromise your cupboard, and then they have to go, and then only then be able to start cracking the safe, right? So now there's a time for you, right? So let's say if you're there at home or someone you're seeing at the neighbors that your neighbor is getting, robbed, you'll have a time to call the police, and police may come in time to prevent that. So that's the point about defense. An excellent explanation from you. Very much. Thank you very much. Right. The code level The next part, and this is very much important, what we are seeing in the current process where the organizations are shifting more towards is that because they didn't have any kind of an experience in cybersecurity. When we see a lot of our students going for the interview rounds, we are seeing at two types. There is a team which are already have been using DevSecOps for a couple of years, and there are teams which are not implemented DevSecOps, and they want our students to go to the organization, help them build the DevSecOps. Teams which have been doing DevSecOps for a couple of years' time, meaning that they have been in this business for 1 or 2 years, they're seeing that they can reduce the lot of their workforce and reduce a lot of time and headache and things if they can identify the vulnerability at the code level. Right. So in code level, there are two processes that happens, right? So one is looking at the code manually. There are two parts. One is the SaaS tool. There's a tool that is going to check out any vulnerability is there. Second part is to manually look into that, right? It is a manual code review is really a complex job. At the same time, it is a high paying job where you need to know that particular programming language and you look at the flow of it, understand is there a vulnerability possibility of that, right? So that is where it's going to be there. So that, right? And second part is nowadays in DevOps, you might have seen how do you manage your code? You manage your code using the Git. There are multiple, it could be Gitbucket, GitHub, and other places where you're GitLabs, where you're putting up your code, right? So what are the issues that could be faced out there? Right? What are the issues that could be faced out there and how do we overcome this, right? So how many of you are having a GitHub account where you regularly post your code? Guys, it's a question. So I'm having a GitHub account. I regularly go and check out my code or making any modification to that. I'm going to be there. But what is the difference between my GitHub account and let's say Microsoft or Google or anyone is having a GitHub account? What is the difference? Right. Since I use the public tier and it's a free tier, so my code is going to be public. Anyone can have access to that. Right. Whereas in other companies which are using GitHub, they will be able to have a private. So only a certain amount of people will be able to have access to that. And inadequate access control is a major issue what we have seen. So there are applications where the code is so good that there is no vulnerability at all and we are not able to break it, but their entire code base available for public access, right? The source code is open. They forgot to make their GitHub account private. So all we have to do is that check out their application, start trying to Google search there what could be there and present out there. In some cases, they do give out their links for the GitHub as well. And when we open that GitHub and every code is there, right? And there are cases, if that access control is not done properly, people could actually make changes to your code, right? So they could actually put in a pull request and make inject attack out there. And this has happened in real time, right? I think recently there was a particular attack vector that affected all your Linux because they use a particular code for zipping and that code was vulnerable. There was a backdoor installed inside that code. So everyone has downloaded that package can be hacked without any issues, right? The backdoor was there in the right from the beginning, and that could be there. The code tampering is a big issue out there. If you don't manage your access control, right? At the same time, it could also lead to the injection attacks, right? I could inject malicious code into that, not only do a backdoor and do things as well. And in certain cases, what is going to happen is that if you write a proper code in a certain way, what is going to be there? There is going to be your username and passwords in your code. As for instance, an example is what we saw there. One application was a PHP application, and that PHP application is connecting to MySQL in the backend. Whenever a request is sent from PHP to the MySQL, it is supposed to authenticate itself to the MySQL. And this is an application level. username and password. That program is been done, and that code, that username and password is stored in the code. So now this adds the entirely complete process for that. So now since the GitHub is open to public, they can go through your code and they can look into the keys that you use, right? For connecting to cloud services, there could be T keys out there, and those things can be part of that, right? So how do we, right? So how can we prevent such kind of an attack? Any idea?
Sorry,
How can we?
Karthik.
Yeah.
Devashish here.
Yes, sir.
Good morning to you. How are
Good
you?
morning. I'm good.
Okay. Actually, there was a question from OS.
Okay.
I'm not sure whether I have pronounced it correctly, but anyway, sir, which tools used to make a source code more secure from hackers?
Yeah. So tools, as we discussed here, tools like SonarQube, 45, and checkmarks. These are the tools that are used for identifying the vulnerabilities at the code level. Right. In our main code, we're using the SonarQube to identify the vulnerability processes in the code itself. So this tool can be used, and most commonly used tool in real time these days. Hope that answers the question. Any other question? So how do we work on this kind of situation? Is going to be yes, that's the thing. As I told, your SonarQube plays an important role, right? So you'll also see one more thing is that the more the tools you're going to use and more you're going to be well versed with security, as the process goes further and further, it is going to be much more easier for the developer and for the security in charge as well, because developer would have implemented the code even without you asking whether this function is there or not. From the day one, they will come up, see, this is the login page, these are the functionalities, security functionalities we have added to this process. Is there anything we're missing? So that is going to be there. That is going to happen on the cycle, the couple of cycles. Once it goes, they will learn from it, and that's going to be the process. Right. So source code security, let's come back here. In source code security, there is a lot of features nowadays. It is allowed by your GitHub. I think you can see the access control. It provides not only GitHub, your any Git repository management tools that you get provide a lot of security features nowadays to prevent any kind of an attack at that, right? So access control, where you can manage who can access and who cannot access for that. I think in some cases, the no longer username and password is not supported when you're automatically committing and pulling and pushing the request and things like that. That is not going to be done by username and password. You need to have a token-based approach to prevent a brute force attack, right? So pull request review. So before making any kind of an merging with other code, you'll have to review those code as well for any vulnerabilities and things like that. Preventing people checking and pushing any code, unwanted code into that. It's also going to be there. At the same time, if you remember a few slides back, we talk about software composition analysis, where we talk about the dependency packages. Right nowadays, we are seeing your Git repository management tools are providing that option as well. Right, so where they will tell this particular tool or the package you're using from a third-party tool is actually vulnerable. Please be careful about using this functionalities or things like that. Right, that is going to be there. And Git dependable bot is going to automatically update your dependence. Right? So what does it mean is that, so whenever you're updating or things like that, it'll always make sure you're using the latest version of Python. It'll always make sure you're using the latest version of jQuery and things like that. Right? So that is going to be major process about it. So as you can see from here, you might have got an idea, right? What we did in pen testing is what we are doing in say DevSecOps only, but the process here is entirely different. The way we are adding the salt is different over here. So instead of adding the salt at the end, we are adding the salt at the in beginning itself, but it has such a huge impact, right? It has such a huge impact for you to go forward with that, right? One more thing, right? So when we're talking about DevOps, right, what are the compared to your previous approach, right? Your on-premise services and things like that, or traditional approach, what is that going to be exactly added out? Right? The previously you could see we are directly entering a virtual machine or creating a physical server, installing software on things like that. But when we come to DevOps, we are introducing the concept of containerization. We're using Dockers for running our services and things like that. Now, this increases the attack surface, right? Why? Now, there is an issue with your Python programming language. When if you're using Python, if you're using PHP, that could be there. If your host operating system is Ubuntu, there could be a vulnerability there and things like that. Now, all those things are there previously, what we saw. Now I'm introducing a new tool into the process. When the new tool is introduced, attacker will have that tool also as an approach, right? Attack surface is going to be there. One more place he can look into attack surface, attacking, right? So that is also is it in a container security challenges we faces. How do we secure, make sure that the containers are safe, right? That could increase an attack vector. It is also could be possible that the Docker image that you're downloading, right, is actually could be vulnerable. Just like your Python is having some issue, which is having some problem, vulnerabilities introduced. Similarly, your Docker images could be old and that may be have introduced a new vulnerability into that. So that is also major problem, right? For instance, if your son Docker Hub, in your case, right? So let's say docker.com, right? And if you go for an Ubuntu Docker image, you could see an Ubuntu Docker image, you're going to have how many? It is going to allow only 4 versions of Ubuntu, right? Only 2020, 2022, 2023, and 24. What about 18, Ubuntu 18, Ubuntu 16, 17, 19, all those things? It is no longer supported because they are vulnerability into that. But what if you don't know about? What if your Docker image created by you is from 2021, right? Which is not in the long-term support and it is vulnerable for that. So how do you know? You may be running a vulnerability. Runtime time, right? Just like other attacks that is happening out there, privilege escalation in a normal application, Docker could also face the same situation, right? The containers could also face situation that could be there. And lack of isolation is also happening is that containers on same host share the host OS, leading to lesser degree of this is what you the main reason for using a containers, right? So meaning it is going to be an isolated environment. Know that the other application in your system, in your one more Docker image that is running out there, should not have access to your data that belongs to you. And if what if that is going to be compromised? A simple example I can tell is that let's say you're storing something in your Google Drive or in let's say Amazon storage. And that is a 1 terabyte storage that is being given by the Google Drive. And your data is about 1 GB of that data. Are they going to assign you one single hard drive or are they going to share that hard drive with hundreds of users, right? That 1 terabyte of data can be shared by hundreds of users. What if there's a vulnerability where it will leak that barrier that I will be able to read other people's data, right? Similarly, how does the container security is going to be there? It has happened in the past. The vulnerability Dockers are kept on updating and things like that, where they're able to break out of that isolation. Hackers are able to break out of that isolation and jump into other application and take control of it. Right. So one of the reasons, main security issues, what we have seen in cloud security is this, lack of isolation in cases. Okay. So that is there. So how do we overcome this? As always, make sure you always go with the trusted images. Regularly update your images. Don't wait for it to when you're adding a new functionality. As it is a continuous integration process, we need to keep on checking for this process, right? And always make sure least privilege, meaning don't give unnecessary access to users or applications and only give what relevant to them. So example for this is that you might have seen in your mobile phone, whenever you install a new app, you are supposed to set to specify what it can access. Can it access your contacts? Can it access your files and folder, media devices and things like that? And those things are right. Giving access to complete file system is different. Giving access to your documents, right? In download folder, documents and picture folders is different. Right? If you give complete access, your contact list is going to be there. And one more main critical bug there is your dictionary, right? Where it will store the previously entered characters by you. And some cases, there was a vulnerability, previous the companies have overcome this. Even your password was getting stored in the dictionary because that is a text that you have entered out there. And so that was getting stored as well. So anyone having access to your dictionary in your mobile phone will have access to your password as well. Monitor container activities, right? Splunk is one of the main things where you can look out for what is happening. Is there any unwanted data that is getting traveled? Is it receiving any lot of data when it is not supposed to, right? Let's say there's an application that is designed only for the senior management, right? It's a very complex application, but that is going to be designed for a senior management. One example was a call center application for an American Express, right? So they have a call center all over the world, and every day there's a head count that is calculated out there. And that particular application is only for the country heads out there. So probably maximum there are about 30 to 40 people accessing that data, looking at a chart, telling me which country, what is head count, how many calls was dropped, and customer satisfaction. Very small single page, nothing too much information and things like that. And only 50 people will have access to that. What if there is a huge request? Thousands of requests are coming in that all of a sudden into that application. Right? At that time, it is going to be a huge impact. At that time, we have to monitor that, okay, why it is happening out there. Right? And finally, is always going to be the access control. Access control is a major problem, but if you get sorted out, 99% of the time your application is safe. How we are going to manage that is very much important. So again, password management is important here. Who's going to access? In some cases, we can configure firewall. How can they access and things like that? All those things. All right. The containers can be logged in and do that. So some of the tools, right? Some of the tools that we see in container security is Anchor, Aqua Microscanner, and Treevy, right? So it will check for vulnerabilities. It will check whether your container or a Docker image is vulnerable or not, or is it having any component inside that which is vulnerable. All those things can be checked out here. And once that check is complete, then it will move on to a different stage, right? And finally, it is going to be your training and awareness settings. That is very much key here. Human is always the weakest link, right? So they'll always leave out the wrong configuration that is happening in an organization in the infrastructure is because of a human factor. People are clicking on links, which is leading to malicious actions. That is also done by human out there. Not only at that logical level, at the technical level, even at the physical level, right? If the watchman or the security guard is not attentive, it could let an hacker inside the organization, right? He can be social engineered into allowing someone. There are a lot of cases where people have taken up exact uniform, taken a security badge, and the badge will look exactly the same thing, but they'll come to the gate and tell my badge is not working. I don't know why it is that, and that someone would have buzzed him inside, right? And this is also one more situation is that inside the organization, they will carry a large amount of content in their hand and they'll act like they're trying to open the door. And you thinking, okay, some person is struggling, let me help him. And you'll swipe and you'll let the person. So you don't know whether that's going to happen. In my case, it has happened. What I usually do is that I'll take the person's ID card and swipe it for him out there, but I'll never use my ID card out there. Right? So it is very much important. They have to make them understand what is security, because it is not their fault that they don't know about security, because they have not been taught in the school, they have not been taught in college what exactly is that. They've always been taught developers and things like that. They've always been taught about how to do activity. Right? From a personal perspective, it is now that we don't see many European applications getting compromised because their security awareness is much important, not only by people approach, from a government approach itself, right? Where they give privacy a lot of importance, not only in IT, in other things as well. If you're having a CCTV camera, you're supposed to put up a sign that you are this area is being monitored using CCTV. Okay. Right? Even if you have a CCTV camera in front of your house to see your driveway, that anyone is standing in front of your house door or things like that, even if there's a part of that screen where it shows there's a road, it's been captured out there, even part of that, you have to report to the police department that this data is going to be stored. And again, there should be an sign outside where that this is actually under CCTV control. And that is how much the privacy is important for them. Similarly, we see, right, the more and more organizations are working on it, and that is going to be done. Right? So what do you think, right? So do you think based on this approach we are able to identify security mitigations at a faster rate? Does it make sense for you guys? Right? Any questions in this?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So relating with that containerization, so
Hmm.
suppose like you say that we have to be always up to date with the like update the tool, like if it
Correct.
is otherwise we can code by vulnerability.
What?
Sorry.
Yes. Correct.
Yeah. So suppose whenever any mm, um, we create a pipeline, right? And
Correct.
for that we got something from developer, which we did in our capstone project, right? So
Hmm.
there was pet clinic, spring pet clinic, and we got that from GitHub, and we bring it in our master server, and then from there we send that to the slave server. So
Correct.
suppose we have done everything, set up the pipeline and everything is done. So
Hmm.
whenever we already set it to the slave server, after that my job is done, right? Because
Hmm.
and we will check the regular because it is CI/CD pipeline, so continuous integration and everything we will check all that we have done. We will do the
Correct. Yes.
monitorization. So
Correct.
after finishing that, just on monitor part, do we have to like upgrade if any new upgrade comes up on Docker image or
Yes.
any section? Do we have to constantly keep eye on upgradation, which we have done previously? That was the
Yes. So that is the security is always an infinite loop, and even companies will have to constantly keep checking for that, right? As an On a normally, we'll see there's a cycle of security is going to be repeated once in every 3 months. Meaning, even that application was tested, like pen tested 3 months back, I have to retest that application again because the code might have changed and the new code might have increased the vulnerability, right? Similarly, I have to run the scans. I have to run the scans periodically. So how periodically is going to be your responsibility. Okay. For instance, when you're taking up a GCP server for running a process, your GCP, your Google Cloud platform is going to run scans at a much more frequent level out there. They're constantly running and things like that. Let's say there's an Ubuntu Python, that's a new version is going to have come out there. They immediately will run a scan on all the machines, right? What are the millions of machines that are there? They'll run a scan and check, is there a vulnerability that particular version is there or not for that. Similarly, you'll be able to run the scan yourself. It will be again your dependence on your team who's going to decide how often you're going to run that process on that, right? If the code is going to be updated very quite often, right? So for instance, let's say container, you're going to give it as information as Docker run, right? And you'll give, let's say Ubuntu is what you're going to give. If I give just Ubuntu, what is going to happen? It is going to download the latest version of Ubuntu. But if I'm giving a particular tag, if I'm telling Ubuntu 22.04 is what I wanted out there, after a couple of years, that will no longer be getting the upgrades. But you'll still be running your CI/CD pipeline in this way. So at that time, you'll be introducing the vulnerability. Instead of that, make sure that while you're running the CI/CD pipeline, when you're downloading the Docker's images for running the deployment, make sure you are downloading the latest version of that one.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. Right. So one more thing that also happened is that, let's say when you're downloading, Docker Compose or anything, you'll download before building. There are certain commands that you run your Docker image, right? So make sure when one of the commands that is going to be included is apt upgrade. So it should, after downloading the 22, let's say 24.04, make sure you run an apt upgrade so that all the latest patches are pushed into the machine, right? If there is a miscompatibility, that build is going to fail and you will know immediately what exactly is there. Even without looking into security vulnerability, then you'll know, okay, there's a vulnerability is introduced. I will have to rewrite my code, and that's the process goes. So that is how that's going to work. Thank you for the wonderful question. It makes it easier for others to understand things. Right. Before, next slide is basically about the job market and what we are seeing out here, right? So we are expecting it is rightly a $4.4 billion DevSecOps market is going to move towards $30 billion market by 2032. And it keeps on going, right? And you can see there's a significant jump, right? Crowd segment and things, it has grown at a significant process. And in North America, as Menon previously specified, it is the biggest market and they are aggressive adapters of new technology, right? Compared to US is going to adapt, and because they have the ability to adapt, because they have the best resource pool set and all the services, and more importantly, they will be able to fund the project to get into that, right? So that what we have seen, right? If you've seen in a first line of week of webinar, we saw this different salary packages and different roles that are present out there. And nowadays, what we are seeing is that DevSecOps is being penetrating in each and every role into this. Any kind of an interview that someone is going out there, if they're going for something like a source code analysis role, they're asking for DevSecOps, CI/CD pipeline. There is 10 to 15 minutes question and answers based on interview, asking about what is the tools, how to do that, how do you analyze. Even for pen testing roles, they're asking for a DevSecOps, so they're asking CI/CD pipeline and how to use and things like that. So DevSecOps is going to go up is what we feel. and it is going to have a significant impact. And it is one of those places where it is going to disrupt a lot. And we are seeing even though there's a lot of recession going on, things like that, there's still a lot of openings for DevSecOps, right? There's a lot of interviews that is happening out there. If you get the process right and everything, and you will see the difference. You'll see the difference how it's going to pan out.
Here, I would like to add one more thing. If you give me
Yes.
1 minute.
Sure.
So, literally 2 or 3 domain positions is literally obligated from the market. One is testing, one is development. Now, right now, 2 or 3 domain is doing very good. One is DevOps, DevSecOps, and cybersecurity. And you should not believe on my words. You just need to check on LinkedIn and search for job role, select the country, and just check how much open position is available. And third is data-driven thing. Data-driven job is always be there because AI is powered by data. So you can consider data analytics, data science, data engineering. Data job is always there, but the issue, or you can consider data-driven jobs. Either you need to know the coding, or you need like mainly Python, or you need to know multiple tools like DevOps, which is the name is data science, sorry, data analytics, or SQL, Tableau, and big data, Hadoop. This things is incorporated. But DevOps, AI, now when the AI hit the market and it hit big impact in AI, IT industry, the mostly it impacted in QA and testing, manual testing, this field. And there are certain company who have, I'm just name it, and let me name it. There is a bank named Citibank. Most probably all of you knows that the bank name. They have a huge offshore team managed by TCS, and within a day they just remove all their testing team because they are taking help on the AI. So instead of paying the testing team, they hired more cybersecurity and automation and AI people. So AI will not going to disturb the job market, but job market will evolve. Some old job role will be changed, some will not be there, and some new job role will flourish. So that is the message I would like to share from the from industry point of view. Yeah, Mr. Karthik, please continue.
Yeah, even not only, it's like even your traditional job roles, let's say you're a developer or a network engineer or anyone, they're asking them to take up security as well. They don't, because since they're finding it so difficult to find security personnel, they are looking for developers who can implement security at the code level, who can understand. Let's say there's vulnerability identified by a pen tester. So the one of the interviews questions they ask is that, okay, we want some developer who can even run our CI/CD security pipeline as well. Can you do that as well? So in the future, I personally believe everything security is going to be part of it. Anyone who is going to join any role, security is a topic that they should be aware of, right? So, and DevSecOps is only the starting for that. And since one more advantage at this stage is that you will be, even though there's so much DevSecOps is being introduced about 10 years back, you don't get people who have worked on DevSecOps, that many people, right? A lot of teams, let's say 3 to 4 years of experience in DevSecOps is what we see in the industry. So usually what happens is that it helps you with the long-term promotions as well. People who are joining a new team, they're going to be at a leadership position itself or there, and they, as the organization grows and gets older, they're going to be promoted along with that as well. So you're not starting at the junior role and things, and you're going to be stuck in that. So this is the advantage of going with DevSecOps as well. Since it's a very early role, it helps out with the long-term process as well. And one more thing that what we are seeing is that most of the DevSecOps interview or application security interviews, the interviews when it goes to the first round is an HR round. We are seeing the second and third round or the fourth round is actually happening with the top tier management. The VP is taking it up, and then there's an the CISO is actually interacting with you in the roles and things like that. It is not that you are stuck with the middle management. So you're going to be constantly interacting with the senior management of things out there. So it will also help you with the better visibility for your role in the organization. So as the time passes by, I think there'll be more people in that, and then it will come down. But now there is less people out there. I think it's a very good time to take up DevSecOps. Is what I feel. Right. So that comes to the conclusion for DevSecOps. As we could see, right? So DevSecOps is basically a cultural approach, and we are taking your traditional process that what we are doing it and putting it in terms of DevOps, right? Taking your traditional tools, putting it into an automation process and things going about that. Right. One simple example I can show you is this, right? Most of you have gone to the DevOps role. You might have seen there's a pipeline that usually runs, right? So there's a deployment phase and things like that. What happens in a DevSecOps role is that you can see here, we are downloading the Git and then we start scanning the processes, right? There's a tool called for SCA or OS dependency. We can do that. Then we are running your code on the Sonar Cube. Then we are checking the Docker image, right? There's a vulnerable image out here so that it is blocking it and it is not completely deploying the process out there, right? So instead of manually, so if you see in the previous content weeks, if you had seen where we are manually running things and processes and things like that, it will take a lot of time, right? So, but here what all I have to do is that come back here, make changes, come back here. Instead of running it manually, all I have to click on the build now process and the cycle will repeat again for me. Right. So that is the main advantage. And that's a simple example. And this is part of the course that what we do this particular project. We are implementing it. So we're trying to add one more project as well, much more deeper into that. So we should be able to do it with the next batch. So it gives you a complete 360-degree, right? And we have, I think we would like to take pride in telling that the students that were coming up, were going an interview, attending the interview, they're telling most of the things that are asked in the interview is covered in the course, right? Both for DevOps and DevSecOps, students are talking about that. So we plan from practical approach and where again, we're going to talk about the process approach as well, right? Usually when you're going from a senior role, you're not only technical skill is important, your process driven approach is also important. And the courses are basically designed on that, right? And you will see in the future. That's good, right? So any questions, right? Any questions about the topic or about the job roles or anything, please let us know. Anyone having any questions? Kamzida, you are having any questions?
No, the question which I had that already I asked, but for now, no question anymore. Thank you so much for asking.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, then I think.
Sorry, Karthik, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Am I allowed?
Yeah, please. You're always allowed.
Actually, the question is very practical. What I have observed in IBM is that there is a lot of security in place. I mean, our coders, I was a project manager, and I found my development team used to struggle with the security. You say that security in place, that means we had a big security office. Okay. So
Yes, SOC. Yes.
yes, SOC, yes. So there was a huge sort of a tussle between the SOC team and our development team, because almost 60 to 70% of the codes used to fail, and vulnerability tests, though it was not that vast, but then it was a big issue. I mean, as a project manager, we used to struggle to get to a point where it is acceptable.
Yes.
Okay, because IBM is very, very process oriented, and they will not allow anything going to the client which is not 100% security foolproof.
Correct.
Correct.
Yes.
So how do you mitigate? Because I had a practical problem in when going through, because we didn't have that much of a view that what threats it could possess. That is one question. How do you mitigate? I mean, what is the best way? What is your industry experience? How companies are addressing this issue? Because that is a practical problem on ground.
Correct.
Many
That's true.
our development team used to struggle a lot, and there are at that point of time when I was working in IBM, they were not very much. And now there are lots of tools, but we're not using SonarQube or so many other tools that was in practice, which is in practice nowadays. That is one
Right.
thing. Another thing is, suppose our client is not very security aware, and they are also not they are not interested in funding for the security aspect of that project. I mean,
Yes.
IBM is willing to implement all the security checkpoints. Okay.
Yes.
But that is going to cost the client some money. Definitely.
Yeah. Yes.
So, but the client is not in a position to negotiate on that part. I mean, they are not very security aware, and they don't want to dish out some extra money for the security aspect. How will you practically go about this problem?
Yeah. So let me answer the second question first. Right.
Yeah.
As I told, based on my experience, right, we do test a lot of application, things like that, and client is not always not interested to get, right. There are two types of clients. Before we used to get clients which got breached, who got hacked, they get serious about it and they'll come and go about that, then ask us to implement security.
Right.
So for the clients who are not interested or want to, they will show that they have some security. If they get hacked, they want to show that they have things like that. They will not implement the correct security features, right? And that is where the compliance requirement comes into play, right? So for instance, if the PCI, if you're collecting credit card information, the PCI will tell you have to get your application tested, and I need a third party vendor, not you. I don't want you test yourself and tell me everything is done. I want a third party vendor to come into my organization and check this is been done. There is no security breach, adequate security features are there, and only then I will give you the license, right? Otherwise, you can't do transaction on your website, right? So meaning the people will not be able to use their credit card on that website, and they will not be able to do the business out there. So this forces them, and this is what you told is a very genuine problem that we say. Even after showing them this is a vulnerability, they will tell we will not fix it because it's not timeline. We have other functionalities that are important. This is not important out there, right? And
Yes.
same thing happened for one of the Middle Eastern companies which were doing the question. They had an online exam portal for a lot of medical colleges in the Middle Eastern countries. And Middle Eastern countries nowadays are very stringent, right? The server also cannot be in some other country, right? For us in India, we can have a server in US, then we can send the data to one floor. So now, because of compliance is there in the Middle Eastern, it is punishable in a much more higher offense. It is not just a financial punishment of that. So now they're coming up and telling that we want this to be implemented and things like that. So what is the plan for that? How often? So now all of a sudden they'll forget that is there. And same thing is growing up. One is the compliance is coming into play, that is having an impact. And we're also seeing is that a lot of these companies, which are small companies, right, which are much more susceptible to attack and who don't have funding, which they will not do. Uh, they're also coming in for testing purpose, because let's say there's a small startup and it needs to be acquired by a bigger company, or they're going and try to sell their product to a bigger company. And the bigger company is telling now, how do I know your application is safe? How can I trust my data in your hands? Right? So then if you want me to trust my data in your hands, please get a pen test done from a recognized organization, and then we'll go forward. So without that, don't even think about coming and interacting with me. So that is where it is moving now. So that is going to be in there, right? So coming to your first question, right? There's a huge gap with the developer, and there's always a fight, and we always do that, But I have to tell it has come down significantly. The
Yes,
reason developers not able to fix the vulnerability is not because they are not intelligent or dumb. They're extremely intelligent, but they don't understand how an attack is happening, right? They don't know how is what we have done is that we usually show them how the attack is happening, and they don't get to understand that, right? They'll fix it, but it is not up to the mark. The application is not. So there was one company, a couple of companies that came into this, and they understood, okay, developers are struggling and things like that. What they did was they did a 10 days program for them for web application perspective only, where we taught them what is an attack, why that attack is going to be successful and things like that. And developers understood that, and we could see the immediate impact of it. In the next cycle, we hardly found any vulnerabilities. And they were laughing at us because we thought like we were having to work more hard to find vulnerabilities. Then we had to give another report telling that there is no vulnerabilities, why there is no vulnerabilities. And then we also send out an appreciation letter for the developers as well, that we have done a
great.
very good job. Right? So that is basically the gap of knowledge. Once we are able to train the developers on that, they will do an excellent job out there. Yeah.
So,
And
Karthik,
yes,
fantastically answered. Actually, you addressed that. So that means this the students who are aiming to be a security professional, cybersecurity professionals, they also need to have something in their mind as a role. They are not only a pen tester, they are also having a bigger role, that is to change the culture of an organization,
yes,
isn't it?
yes, yes.
To make more and more developers, testers, your operations guy come into that ambit of that circle of where you inculcate that particular culture of
True,
security awareness.
true.
That is part of their role as well.
Yes. And we have seen in that students, we have experimented with students with that. When they put that role and responsibilities in their resume, that they're part of they regularly do a security awareness training, like Joseph has done. He has put up out there
Okay,
where it has a huge impact, right? So we have
okay.
seen that there is okay, the client comes back and tell, okay, we are happy to know that you're there. So would you be interested in doing the same security training in our organization if you're selected and things like that? So
Okay,
that will
great, great.
also have
I
an
got it.
impact. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Kat.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thanks for sharing this information, Kartik. Thank you.
Yeah, thank
And
you.
before, I think we are at the end of the session. I have a few things to tell. The cybersecurities, our training is going to start from May 10th. Those who are planning to join, it is a evening batch, by the way. Those planning to join, complete the registration as soon as you can, because it is not, we are not circulate the things in other groups. So on that thing, and it is as it's a limited seat class, there is a chance that it will run out the open position. And we do have a coupon code if you are planning to register today. Damsida, I got the message. I think one of our member already ping, so you don't need to worry because you are doing the already enrolled. So apart from Tamzida, if anyone doing the registration today, feel free to ping me. I or in any of our group. So one of me or any other of our team member, they will ping and share one coupon. It will save $30 during your registration.
So the class will be only the evening, like evening means CST evening, or evening means India evening, like
CST evening.
Oh, there will be no day class. Okay.
And now the second thing is our DevOps internship program is completed. We are planning to start one of our new internship program based on AI, regenerative AI, and machine learning. So whole data engineering courses in internship form. So if anyone or willing to have an idea what is going on in behind the AI curtain, feel free to join. Or if any students who wants to pursue their career in this AI field, you can join. So, and most probably we are going to change the cybersecurity timing. We need to discuss. We'll do the discuss. Maybe the cybersecurity timing will change. It will shift to the morning session, and this session timing will taken by the AI. Let's see. It depends upon the Mr. Karthik, Mr. Devashish, and our AI trainers availability and flexibility, right? So keep an eye on the group, whichever group you are in, and we will keep you updated. And if you have any doubt, if you have any of our moderator number or my number, feel free to ping us, and we'll guide you. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
The question is there any way to, like, maybe you can give us a project on this DevSecOps so that you'll be able to follow up on our understanding concerning this course?
So there is a capstone project you will work. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Karthik. That is that you will do the practice in our main courses, not in the internship or this weekend session. That is not available.
Yes, yes. Yes, we do
Because
have a DevSecOps project, pipeline project, where it will show different phases, how to implement, and in that part.
here, see, cybersecurity people are doing their PhD on cybersecurity, so this is that much huge. We somehow manage and find a suitable job role which we can complete a 6 weeks training and make our student prepare for that kind, like 2 or 3 roles. Now, if you're talking about the weekend session, we have only 4 weekend. So we cannot go in depth. Better we can go in horizon, like cannot move vertically, because otherwise it's demand more and more times, right?
So what I want to ask is, for the main course, is paid, right?
Yes.
Do we have any coupon code for it?
Yeah, we do have 2 coupon code. One is one referral. If someone is going to join with you, you'll get one coupon, like a referral bonus. Apart from that, as you have already done and devote your time for the internship program, so you have the interest and you are very serious about the coursework, we have another coupon code that is for $30 off. that you can use either one of that or both of that. So, but the only thing this $30 coupon code is valid until Sunday. So if you are serious enough, so because all of our course is 80% hands-on, and to make sure make the integrity of our course, we have a threshold limit of intake students, number of students. Sometimes it's happened that we cannot take certain with more than certain number of students, and now this depends how many new students or fresher, how many refresher students, because sometimes we have refresher students also, they are redoing the same classes twice because they have done the training one time and then they got the job. Now they, to work very efficiently, they need to do the same course second time. So our course is that much good. The thing is, if you want to register, don't wait. You ping in any of our group. I will share or any of our team member will share the coupon code with you. Do the registration. If you face any issue, ping us, and then and after registration, we also you need to share a Microsoft Team email ID, where we can send you the invitation of our training private channel. So this is open channel, anyone can join, but that channel will be private, where inside that channel you will have all the class recording, lab, course content, PPT, documentation, lecture, everything. Okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, good night.
Okay then. Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Karthik. Thank you, Mr. Devashish.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.